Absolutely
Yeah.
does. It also gets below
Oh.
zero. So, fun times all around.
Oh, I think Twitch is ready to go. I see something.
Yeah. Oh, I see Shelby. Okay. Okay. Yay. Okay, I did it, she says. Okay. Hello,
Yay.
everyone. Welcome to the game designer, no, just general designer panel with moderator and game producer Masao Kobayashi. From Come to Bits, I'll let you introduce yourself and our guests and take it away.
Hello. Yeah, as Catherine says, my name is Masao Kobayashi. I'm a producer and studio manager at Studio Cut to Bits. We're a relatively new indie studio in Montreal. I've been in the industry for about 16 years, and I've been hiring people for most of that time. I was talking to Catherine, I don't know, I guess about a month ago, and we've done some roundtables here at Work with Indies, and I thought it'd be really interesting to do a series of roundtables discussing how to get into the industry from different angles, depending on discipline, sometimes focusing on geographical areas, etc. So this is the first of this series, and yeah, we hope you enjoy and find it to be informative. Um, yeah. So should I? Where do we go from here? Do I pick the next person that has to introduce themselves? Let's do that.
I can go.
Okay.
Um, so my name is Kelly Liu. I am a game designer at Filament. We make positive impact games. Um, and so a lot of what I do is educational design. I've been in the industry for like 7 months. I started last year, December. And so I'm pretty new. Before that, I didn't really have, I didn't go to school for games. I was not super prepared for games after my undergraduate. So I'm eager to talk to you all about how I took my non-game background, my non-game education, and was able to get in here. Oh,
I guess I
someone's
can go
from
next.
Madison. Oh, nice.
Hey everybody, I'm Kelsie Moon. I am a narrative designer at Obsidian Entertainment working on The Outer Worlds 2. I've been in games for about 4.5 years now, and before that, I did marketing and communications.
Monica. I'm currently a game designer at Pipeworks. We do a lot of AAA contract works, and I have been doing game design for a little bit over a year. I've been in the industry for like 3.5 years, and I actually went to undergrad in UW Madison, but I later got a degree in game design in grad school, and that's not how I got in the industry, but that's my background.
Oh, Madison is so great. Everyone's doing things in Madison.
Yes. To be fair, there wasn't a lot of game dev stuff when I was in Madison. That was like 5, 6 years ago,
Mhm.
and I actually had to like move to like Chicago because I like really want to do games. But later, like a lot of stuff in Madison just started like happening.
I lived in Chicago for 8 years. That's awesome.
Okay, so let's talk about. So we're gonna so let's start with how you got your first design job. Who wants to go first? Monica.
Okay, yeah, I have a interesting story because I was working as a QA for like and in like production localization for like a while in the industry, but I really want to do design. And how I got into design job is really by accident because I met someone who's looking for a contract and they're looking for like people who are into card game. And I did a thing like I don't even recommend people to, but like I just have a long list. I create a long spreadsheet of like every single card game I played and like my feedback, like pros and cons, and different system. And I think it just the person who hired me was really impressed because they never see someone that has like something like that. So I end up like getting a contract job working on like design for a live service game. And while I'm also like working on like my own game at the same time, I love cats, so I made a lot of different cat game. And one of the cat game got spotted by the people from Shell Game, and so they like hired me for like apprentice program, like a fellowship program, and that's how I like officially work into like game industry. So, but like before that, I've been working in QA for like 2 to 3 years.
Okay. Yeah, I think QA design is a pretty common path.
Yeah, it helps. It helps because like I was able to go to the industry and like I was like I went to like again I said like when I was in medicine I couldn't find a lot of people in game dev. Then I moved to Chicago and there was like game dev hangout and I was just like I really want to work in the game industry. And um I also showed them a cat dating sim I made, and like the person was just like she makes really weird games, and like it'll be interesting. And so I work in that I got to work in that studio for like a year, and I was doing mostly QA, and I was also doing a lot of production. My main job was like doing design documents because we work with publishers, so I'm the one to make sure design documents are up to date before we send out to publisher. And later um I just keep like nagging the lead designer, and he let me design one level, which is was like just amazing. And but also like I made myself independent. Like I'm bilingual. I'm original from China, so I was just like I can do anything. I'm willing to do anything. Just like I just want to learn. So I also help out with like their localization, and that's when I started doing like a lot of accessibility because back in the day, studio don't really have like accessibility design. So I was like, this is like something I can do, and like not other designer doesn't seems to be very interested in it. So I was just like, I can do accessibility, and that's like accessibility design kind of become the key for me to like getting later opportunities because later I work at Old World as like a community manager, and I was like, you need someone do accessibility design. I have experience, let me help you. So like I also did accessibility design for Old World, and that's how like just gain different experience and like kind of like just see what your niche is. That's like a thing I always recommend people is like just see what you can do, what you can help out. And yeah.
Okay, so uh Kelsie,
Hello
you want to
again.
talk to us? You want to
Sure.
tell us how you got your first design job?
Sure, sounds good. So I guess just a little bit of background first. I always wanted to work in games. I always wanted to do narrative design specifically. But I just didn't really do my research to start there. And so for a while, I figured I probably couldn't get into the industry because I didn't have like programming skills or any art skills or anything like that. So I basically pivoted after college to focus mostly on screenwriting. So I had done like a lot of programs about screenwriting and learning creative writing processes, all that good stuff. And I ran into a BioWare writer at a tech and entertainment convention a couple of years later. And she was just so encouraging, basically saying, they're always looking for good writers in the industry, good designers. If you see a position that you think you have a shot at, you absolutely need to apply for it. And I did a couple months later, and that is how I got my first job in the industry. I just really focused on my portfolio, which we're going to touch on a little bit later. But basically, I was pretty good at selling my skills in screenwriting and then just generally in the workplace too. Um, and yeah, that's about it. In hindsight, it really was a mixture of good timing and good luck. But preparation is always good too. So my first job was at Pixelberry Studios, and they focus on young adult stories, kind of choose your own adventure style visual novels that you can download in the mobile app store. And those have a focus on romance and friendship. So basically, I just kind of pulled those samples out of my repertoire and used that to leverage getting a call back there. And yeah, again, I know we're going to touch on portfolios later, but I would say like that is the primary reason why I am where I am. So that's it.
Okay, yeah, it's the I think people really do underestimate how much how important portfolios are. I mean, I know we're gonna get to that, but in many ways, like people do care about CVs, but yeah, you are your portfolio in this industry. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like practical skills, people want to see that. So samples are the end all. Yeah. So you can definitely enter the industry without having any professional gaming experience. So
okay, Kelly, tell us how you ended up in the games industry.
Yeah, I'd say my journey is more similar to Kelsey's. But unlike Kelsie, I didn't have the knowledge that I wanted to go into the game industry for a long time. I went through undergrad, like not knowing what I wanted to do. I was studying psychology and creative writing. Um, and like, yeah, it was the psychology was because I was like, I love writing. I don't think I could make a career as a writer. And so I kind of came towards the end of my last year of undergrad, not really knowing what I wanted to do. Um, Also, that was 2020. Um, but um, we had a course at my school that was talking about video games critically, and that's when I began to think that perhaps I could go into the games industry because I had been playing games and thinking about them very carefully for so long. But because I was about to graduate, I graduated with no portfolio, um, no technical skills. I'm bad at computer science. I took not a single one in undergrad. Um, and so I ended up getting an interview um, through a connection that I made on LinkedIn. That was a big piece of advice. Um, and I got to the very end. They really liked me, but they ended up not taking me and going with someone else because I didn't have the technical skills that they were looking for. And so then I had to take another year to focus on building those skills because I basically decided I'm going to all in on this, and I was in a position where I could do that. Um, and so I ended up doing a master's where I was able to create a portfolio during that time and have that be my capstone project for that 1 year program. I was very lucky because it was right in the pandemic and like no universities had students coming in, and so they gave a huge discount, and that was super helpful. And what I liked about that was that there were mentors to give me guidance, um, not in terms of the specific technical skills that I would need. And these were not, again, our school did not have any sort of games program. Um, so I had mentors who would help me with creating a project for myself and that timeline. And so through that, I was able to get a game done. Like Monica, I made a weird game. It was called Grandma Simulator. And it's like you're a grandmother trying to use a computer to send a birthday card to your grandchild. And it's like, you know how old people are like, oh, is this a virus? Is this a virus? And like in that game, it is a virus. Um, so it was a lot of like, it was a lot of me working on my own because I didn't have any sort of game specific guidance, but also having that structure from a program. And again, ultimately, I was able to end up at Filament because I connected with someone who worked here. And I was doing a lot of meeting people through LinkedIn, just being like, hey, I see you're a designer. I'm really excited about design. I'm a student. I would love to get in. And like just learn about what you do too, just talking to them like normal people. And that ended up leading to an interview, um, which they also said my portfolio was good outside of that connection. And then I ended up here.
Okay, so you mentioned a little bit about your school, which is going to be our next topic. How schooling impacted your kind of entry into the game industry. So, how do you think your graduate program helped you in your search for your job?
Yeah, so again, because I wasn't in um, a, a school that had a lot of games alumni, we didn't have any sort of program at that point. Um, they weren't able to connect me with specific people. Um, there were some people who were like worked at PlayStation, but was on like the product development side and wasn't even really in games. But what really helped was I tried to leverage whatever resources I had. And so if there was any sort of career advice talk, like a resume workshop, how to write really good bullet points, which is a small detail, but it's an important one, or how to write a great cover letter. Those were things that I attended and tried to make the most of. Um, I also like talked to anybody who was in the new media space. So we were a very theoretical school. And so people were studying things academically. And so I just, everything that was remotely game related, I tried to stuff myself into.
Okay. Monica, do you want to talk about how your master's program in video games impacted your job search?
Oh, absolutely. So to me, it's interesting because when I was in undergrad, I think like my first year, I was like, I want to be a game designer, um, which result in me going to undergrad for 6 years because I would study sociology pretty long, nothing to do with game. So I was like, I needed to show I couldn't even go to grad school at the time because like I don't have portfolio or anything. So I end up spending extra 2 years in school to go to art school so I can and I would study like interactive media and like installation stuff and that gave me a portfolio to go to like game design grad school. Um and to me, the biggest difference not for the grad school is not like what it taught me, rather just before, but like before I went to grad school, I've been basically applying for game industry job for like 3 years before I got my first one, and I applied like hundreds, thousands of them. And it just doesn't, you just don't get anything. And like I was applying, I was like, I'm very passionate, I'm willing to learn, and they just nothing nothing come back. And one thing that grad school, uh, going to a program that study game design gets me is people start to realize I'm serious. Because before that, people just be like, oh, like she just, she's interested, but she's not serious. She's not gonna, because it takes a long time to train a game designer. So, like, a lot of school, like when company hiring junior, it's a lot of like, is it worth the time? Is it like what value do they bring in? Or like if I spend a year or 2 year train them, are they gonna keep doing this or are they gonna like, give up? So having like being in grad school gave me the ability to be like, this is what I want to do. I'm very serious about this. I am I'm spending a lot of money to go to grad school. And but another thing that I like grad school helps me is again, I also don't have a background in computer science. Study computers kind of scary when you like spend your whole life in humanity, and so like grad school kind of forced me to learn how to code, to learn how to use engines, and like it basically puts you in this environment and mindset that there's nothing else matters in your life other than your goal and like what you're trying to do. So like being in grad school like kind of like forced me to learn a lot of skills I need, but also it forced me to like network with other people, and like there's a lot of like at least in Chicago, a lot of game dev are school affiliated. So like local IGDA is very like integrated with school. So being like a student, like gave me access to a lot of networking events, to different connections, to be able to talk to people. And um, once people realize how serious I am about the career, they are more willing to like share their experience and like different stuff. Again, that was like a few years ago. It doesn't I didn't know that much like community, like work with indies and like different communities. So to me, grad school is very important to help me uh focus on doing this full time, but also like um being able to like do like make connections and like gain skill. Also, like the reason I go to grad school was because I wasn't sure if I want to work in the industry or if I want to teach. So I ended up getting an MFA degree because the idea is like, oh, if I failed in like game industry, maybe I can go back to teaching. But like the more I study in grad school, the more I'm clear that what I want to do is being a working game designer.
Okay. Kelsie, do you want to talk about how you think that how did not having a academic background in games, impacted your job search?
So basically, to touch on again, I worked in marketing and communications before I jumped over to games. So I think a lot of people probably make the mistake of thinking that any non-games experience isn't relevant. But really, like, especially when you're thinking about design, design is only one part of the job that you'd be doing at any studio. Like, a lot of it is people skills that you need. A lot of it is project management skills. Like, you need to be able to uh, basically just take care of your own stuff essentially. So one of the things that I did when working on my resume is just thinking about, okay, how is my background in marketing going to apply itself to getting a narrative design job? So I just thought about like the different skills that I've learned over the years in my job, and thought about like, okay, what is something that is likely going to come into play at any studio? So thinking again, just like thinking about teamwork skills, thinking about how you respond to feedback, thinking about how you give feedback. Like those are all very valuable skills that I would say you just need to think hard about the kind of jobs that you've had before. Um, so I think that's really just the main thing. Um, in terms of networking, basically the only thing that I did before getting that first job is I was able to kind of look through Twitter, and I touched on this a little bit in the event chat, but basically looking at other people's portfolios and looking at how they present their writing samples is really valuable, um, especially when you're going to apply for these jobs. Like just knowing kind of what the standard is that a lot of hiring managers are looking for is super important. Like you want to make sure that you're kind of on a level playing field with other people, rather than just going in blind.
On the topic of portfolio, so
Masao,
yeah.
can I respond to Kelsey and Monica first?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that made me think a lot. So first, I wanted to touch on what Monica was saying about grad school, and I feel very similarly where grad school was great for me, not because it was um, not because you have to go to grad school, but because it provided me a lot of structure. Like I mentioned, I had that mentor, and even if it wasn't game related, it was still like I had a project that I had to do by the end of the year, and there were multiple people helping me out to that project. And the reason I mention this is that grad school is super expensive. It's definitely not possible for everyone. Um, and so while it worked out great for me, I would say that if you're not in a position to either you're in schooling now or you can't take additional schooling, any sort of thing like that, um, I would say that probably the second best thing for me after grad school would have been to find a way to have all that structure. To have someone who is looking out for me, who I can talk to on a regular basis about, I'm not sure where to take this game, or I'm not sure if I should keep working on this feature, or I'm not quite sure what to do next. Um, Finding someone who can give you that general guidance and finding ways that you can maintain the structure to continuously be working towards building your portfolio or developing whatever skills you want. I think that can go a long way if you can't make it into any sort of official program. Um, and then and yeah, and like my advisor again was not even a games person. She was a theater person, and she just told me about how she thought about productions, how she would try new ideas and realize that this isn't worth the time, this isn't working out. And so that was just super helpful in allowing me to actually finish a project and build towards my portfolio that way. And then in terms of what Kelsey was saying about taking other skills and bring those into game design or any sort of design, I think that's super helpful as well. Thinking about what existing skills you have that would contribute to a game job besides the game explicit parts. So, for example, I would talk a lot about my degree in psychology and how I'm taking the player's perspective. Because it was psychology, I explained some things that were pretty interesting, like um, some counterintuitive things from a design perspective. And I was able to say, for example, in Valheim, everyone gets frustrated by the stamina bar. They say the stamina bar is too little. Well, it's actually not that. It's because you run out of stamina and then you have nothing to do, and that's what's frustrating. So that was from my psychology degree. Um, Being able to use your existing parts and skills to sell yourself as a game professional. And the other thing I also wanted to echo from what Kelsey said was that so for us, Filament is work for hire studio. So we do almost exclusively client work. And in our studio, the designer's position also does a lot of interaction with clients. We also like dip a bit into production. And so having those soft skills of being able to talk to people, being able to clearly communicate an idea, those were also really helpful. So those are not explicitly game related, but if you're looking at a job description, try to find ways that your existing background can meld in.
That's all very good advice. Regardless of if you're going into design or not, there's a lot of like transferable skills that game developers have. I mean, today we're not talking about production stuff, so I'm not going to be talking very much about my background. But yeah, I don't have an academic background in video games, and I had no experience in video games before I got my first job. But I did have a lot of relevant skills that did help me. So,
Yeah,
um,
to me,
oh,
Would you mind
okay.
touching on that, Masao? That actually, I was thinking that like a lot of the skills that I transferred over to narrative design are probably similar to maybe what you were able to transfer into production. I'm just kind of curious what those are, because those are
Well,
things that probably
my
anyone would take a look out for.
situation was quite unique. So I started out in localization. So basically, in not even localization management, I was a translator. So my hard skill that I brought was the fact that I was a Japanese English translator. But one of the things about like translation interpreting is that you're basically between two people who want to communicate with each other, and you're trying to facilitate that. So you become very, very good at kind of boiling down like what people are trying to say and trying to communicate that efficiently and effectively, which is something actually like, and I think that really helped in my kind of going into kind of production and kind of well, I mean, pretty much all my jobs. I think that really that's a really useful skill. I also studied political science, which doesn't sound like it would be relevant at all. But I did a lot of theory, and before I went into production, I actually was in marketing, and almost all the like the ideas that marketers use are generally bastardization of like uh, political philosophy or literary theory, postmodern theory. Like all of that is pretty much kind of gets like it's like a commercial kind of application of a lot of that kind of philosophical ideas. So
hmm
it actually ended up being very straightforward when I was like, okay, well, what am I trying to do with this screenshot, or what am I trying to do with this trailer? Formulating these ideas, um, actually, like the exercises that the skills that I had to learn to like write long essays on like different political ideas helped me a lot actually in kind of first having a specific idea that I want to communicate, and then be like my communication skills that I learned through translation really help me kind of be able to sell these ideas.
Yeah, yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah, like that's definitely a skill that you're going to run into time and time again on the job in any studio as well. Like just basically parsing information that's thrown at you from, this person over here, but you need to find a way to communicate that to another person in another department. So again, those communication and collaboration skills are super important, and you can find that in pretty much any job outside of the industry. Just I would say find a way to talk about that a little bit, maybe in your cover letter or in your resume, because those are all skills that people are definitely on the lookout for. Like you could be like a rock star game designer, but if you can't communicate, it's going to be really tough to work with you.
Which happens a lot. Like,
It does.
you do get these people who are like, either they're really good programmers or they're really good artists or they're a designer that made like a really cool like, solo project. And then you try to put them in a group setting and they just can't work with
Yeah,
others. And
yeah,
and that's quite disastrous.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I've been there.
One thing that helps me a lot getting my first job was actually, again, I'm also bilingual, so like to me, the one thing I always showcase is I understand how to communicate beyond culture, because a lot of like American, like North American company, they were like, we are making game for like, we want to make game for the global audience, but we don't have anyone who understand what it's like to be like from a different culture or from a different background. But also like what helps me get my first full-time design job was actually it was a VR company, so like we were making a lot of VR game, and I was like I didn't have any VR experience at the time, but I have a lot of experience working in films. I have a lot of experience working in theater, and when I tell be like, I've been in theater for like a long time, I've been like on set and stuff, it's showing that, oh, I know how to work with a team. I know how to solve issues. I know how to deal with tension and stress. And those are like important skills they're looking for juniors, because as you said, it's like um one thing about game designer I learned more than anything is I can't do anything without a team. I need a team, and like being able to know how to communicate with a team, being able to know how to work with a team under like stress, under like everyone has different personality is I think like a very important skill that unfortunately they don't really teach you in school.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's funny. I was just thinking about, I was hanging out with some other designers recently, and we were joking about how, like, people of all other disciplines are like, I want to become a designer. I want to be the designer. But when you're a designer, it's kind of like, well, I can't necessarily make the actual things I'm designing. So it's kind of like a funny thing where, yeah, a lot of what your value is being able to take that idea and communicate it.
Let's move on to portfolios. So I guess I want to ask two questions about your portfolio. One is what is in your portfolio, and two, how did you determine that your portfolio was like how did you go about like determining if your portfolio was appropriate, like in terms compared to other people, in terms of quality, in terms of variety, volume, etc. Kelsie, you want to start?
Yeah. So basically, for my first job, what I did is I just kind of relied on instinct for a lot of it, but I would recommend not doing that. Definitely do your research. Like I would say, look at as many portfolios as possible from people who are successful in the industry. So to see kind of what are they putting in their portfolio that looks like you're
How
basically connecting with the hiring manager.
how do you
Um,
find these portfolios from people who
Yeah,
are successful?
so sure. So basically, what I do, and I still actually do this, I go on Twitter. I basically find people that I think do good work. Um, a lot of times, like 9 times out of 10, they're going to have their portfolio in their bio somewhere. So I would say just look at that. And a lot of times portfolios are, the equivalent of like having a personal site where you can then like click on samples and read them or play through a game. It'll just really depend on the designer and how they've set it up. But I would say like that's a pretty good way of going about it. Um, the other thing to really think about when you're just building it for the first time, like look at job postings for positions that you are interested in or studios that you might want to work for. A lot of times at the bottom, they'll basically tell you what kind of submissions they're looking for. So whether that's like a screenplay or a playable experience or something like that, that's usually a good way of just thinking about what is the absolute bare minimum that I should have in my portfolio. So when I was applying at my first job, for example, they wanted three separate samples, and they just asked for very short experiences, like under 5 pages each. And I would say that's a pretty good rule of thumb as well. Like you want to have like bite-sized things for hiring managers to look at, and you want to grab them in those first 5 pages.
Okay. Monica?
How do I know if my portfolio is appropriate? I don't know. I still don't know. I just want to let you know it's totally okay if your portfolio is not perfect. You can still get a job. And like I feel like it's hard. Portfolio is hard, especially as a game designer, because when I was an artist, portfolio is much easier. Here's the art, here's the stuff, that's my style, that's what I can do. Game design is hard, and like I have portfolio. My portfolio, like I when I got my first job, my portfolio is just a lot of game I made. And one thing, um, I would recommend is if you make your game on itch.io, if you can make it, you can playable in website because like people don't want to spend time downloading, unzip, and try to find where's the exe. Make your game playable. If you're making like game jam game, make them playable in the website is very important. But also like I just because like I have experience in my like in QA and stuff, so I'll be like this is like the project I'm working on. This is the game I published, and here's the stuff I've done, and like showcase exactly like the type of stuff like level design or accessibility design or like gameplay design, and like talk about what you have done in a larger project is very important to me. Another tip I have about portfolio is just personal experience after seeing a lot of portfolio is make sure it's memorable, make sure it's who you are and you'll showcase your personality because a lot of time as hiring manager they're looking at hundreds of portfolio every day. So like be authentic, be genuine, and be like, this is who I am, this is what I'm interested, this is what I like to do, and this is what I have done is to me is very important. But again, I don't think I have a perfect portfolio. Uh, but I just want to say like it's okay to apply for job even your portfolio is not perfect.
For sure. Perfect
I,
portfolios
I,
don't exist.
I want to make one comment about like making your like kind of add on to the Monica's statement about making your portfolio memorable. So I guess like at one point like one of our job posts got posted to like some school, and so we got like a bunch of applicants from this one school, one program, and they all had identical portfolios because they basically had all the stuff that they made in their school program in their portfolio. So it was super surreal to like get like 10 candidates that all had like the I mean slightly different takes on like the same meshes and stuff. Like we'd have like there was like a grandfather clock. All of them had this grandfather clock. And
Oh,
then like all of them
That's
had this like
amazing.
I don't even remember. I do remember the clock, but like there was like five things that they were, I guess, told to they had to model in their program, and it was
Yeah, going
like
back to
don't do
school.
that.
Yeah,
thank you,
going back
man.
to school, these days a lot of game school are they will be like, your final of your class is making a portfolio, and then the teacher will be like, here's the structure. And it's okay if it's your class, but like if you want to send it out, please like personalize it because like a portfolio for your final project is different from like a portfolio you try to apply job.
Yeah, I'm going to take a strong stance on portfolios and say like the portfolio is a product that you're creating for a very specific purpose, which is for people going through the hiring process to look at and determine whether or not you're a good fit for the position. And so because of that, like, yeah, I agree with Monica that there's leeway in what you put, but you have to keep that in mind when you're building pieces for your portfolio. Um, and like I would say it's not the place if you're trying to make something for your portfolio to create your dream game that's, 7 chapters long, and then you can part one is you talk to people, part two is you mine, and part three is you fly. Like it's a very specific um it's a very specific tool that you're using to accomplish goal. And so I would say for design specifically, you're also there to showcase your design abilities. And so when we've gone through the hiring process, like that's what we're looking for, design specifically. Um, and so when you're building a project, it's probably you want to concentrate on making that like the neat part that stands out and is memorable. And it doesn't have to have good art. It doesn't have to have great music. It helps, like all those things help, but really the primary focus is showcasing design. And so like my big portfolio piece, Grandma Simulator, was it was like UI. Like the whole game was told through UI, and it was um I think Windows 98, 95 graphics, like on purpose. Programming was super simple, but the point was that it was a way to show design because I've got these neat parts where like unexpected things happen and it reorients you and the game's no longer 2D, stuff like that. So I would say that like to know if it's appropriate, you ask yourself, is this showcasing the skill I want to showcase?
I think that's an uh, excellent point to bring up. So I think that's going to be it for our pre-prepared questions. We have about 15 minutes left. So Catherine has been kind enough to grab some questions for us.
Yeah. So, chat, now is the time to write down those questions. We won't have time to answer them all, but please ask away. I mean, so for now, I grabbed two questions that stuck out to me. So the first question is, when looking for your first job in the industry, what green or red flags should you be looking out for?
I'll jump in with a green flag. So, and this is also related to the portfolio question. My portfolio was it was like a 2D game, a 3D game, some educational games, and I was at the point where many of you might be at where I did have like a dream place to work at, but I was kind of like I've been unemployed for a while. I just want to be anywhere. I want someone to give me a chance, um, and show me that like so I can show them I can do it. And so for me, one of the things that really drew me to Filament and made also my portfolio a good match was culture. Um, I had a pretty great interview process, and also when I was researching them on their website and stuff, it was like they were really emphasizing the love of learning. They were emphasizing um, sort of like the fun and the quirkiness of it. And like my portfolio was kind of quirky. It was kind of fun. One of the other pieces is like a game about chickens with legs and you like kick each other. And so like all those things kind of lined up. And I felt like it was like my interests happened to align because of that cultural alignment. And that's something that's hard to find, but it's a big green flag.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely agree with that. I guess like you'll basically determine whether a place feels good or not when you get to the question phase of the interview process. So even in this screening call, I would say ask a lot of really good questions about what is the culture like, what is the work-life balance like, what are the demands of this role specifically. And if they're unclear on any of those things, that's usually a red flag, I would say. And I've had some situations too where, the hiring manager's like, yeah, it's kind of a shit show right now. Like, that is a red flag, and definitely listen to that person, because if you step into that situation, it usually will be very tough to get acclimated. So I would say just ask very honest questions. Be direct but polite, obviously. But just don't be afraid to ask any question about what you're curious about. I would say honestly, like a culture fit is more important than anything else.
Also, believe people when they tell you something. Like, never think that like they said something, but be like, oh, well, it's probably not that bad. Like, if they're bringing it up, it's probably that bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. I one thing I do in my interview is I have a background in like gender study and like social activism. I am very honest about it, and like to me, it's like during interview, be honest. Like when there's things like be honest about who you are because you're interviewed them as much they're interviewing you, and sometimes it's just not good at culture fit. And like be honest about who you are and show, and like see if you guys work well together. And another thing, I think it's very important getting your first job. At least when I was getting first job, I was really it very clear. I hate to say this, but your first game design job, you probably is not gonna get paid a lot. Uh, at least like in North America. So like to me, I'm very important in like I want to work with more senior game designer. I want to learn. Like, is the company has the opportunity for me to learn and to grow. To me, that was very, very important for my first job more than like anything. So like I specifically to me, Shao Game was like a wonderful company for the first job because you work with Jesse Shell, you work with so many like experienced game designers, and like I learned so much from just working with people and like learning how they do their stuff. And so like know what you want from the job and like look into the company, see if they have the opportunity for you to learn and grow if that's what you want.
Yeah, I agree. That's huge. Like, one of the questions you should definitely ask is, are there any training opportunities and mentorship opportunities at the studio? Just kind of see like what their philosophy is with that. Because if you're in an environment where people are helpful and really want to teach and to help each other grow, that's always going to be positive.
Yeah, definitely. Uh, let's get let's put another question. So, the second question is, do you think freelance work as a game narrative designer will be beneficial, especially when you don't have the privilege to wait for that first game industry job?
Yes.
Yeah.
Pretty much in every discipline in video games, like a lot of people, first job is not going to be a permanent full-time job. Like that's pretty hard to land initially. So, I mean, if you can find something that like, I mean, maybe you even have like a outside of game industry job, like a part-time job on the side. If you can start getting experience and if you can start building your portfolio, that is definitely better than not.
Yeah, and
Oh,
from the hiring manager's perspective, the best experience you can list is one that's most similar to what they want you to do. And if that's like freelance work is probably more similar than doing something in your own time.
yeah, also, it's to me, freelance work is very important because you need to try it to see if this is really what you want to do. I have met people who thought they want to be a game designer and they
Yeah.
actually work. Being a game designer is different, is very different from like what a lot of people imagine. You're almost never the ideal person. So like sometimes doing freelance work is important to like see if this is what you really want to do before you commit for a full-time job because that's like a lot of commitment, and like if it turns out like you hate it, it's kind of unfortunate.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said so far. Um, yeah, especially I just kind of lost my train of thought here. But basically, like going from making a game within school or making a solo game, it's always going to be very different than when you're working as a freelancer. Um, so I think that'll give you like a pretty good indication of whether this is the kind of work that you do want to do and whether, this is something that you might want to pursue full time. And any experience is always going to be better than just, solo projects or stuff that you've made in school. Like you definitely want to keep growing. You want to stay like relevant, I guess, in the industry. This is also a great way to network with people when you're freelancing. Like, one, you're going to be getting a credit, hopefully, on a game. Sometimes that doesn't always happen. But hopefully, you will be getting one, that experience, two, that credit, three, you're going to be making, friends, hopefully, or contacts with people at the company you're freelancing at. And that's always going to be valuable. So I would say like pursue that if you can, but also know your limits. Like you don't want to work for very, very little money and have that be your full-time income. Like I would definitely say it's better to have like a more stable job on the side while you're doing all of that.
And from a hiring standpoint, like when you have a freelancer that's really great, you do tend to like tell people, hey, like, does anybody want to pick this person up because they're really awesome? And we don't have a full-time job for them, but you know, because the thing is, like, hiring managers are talking to other hiring managers all the time, especially in indie. And we're always saying like, hey, is there a game designer? Is there an animator? Is there a programmer? Like, we really need somebody. So having your name out there among these people who would talk to each other is really beneficial.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
make a good impression. It really matters. Yeah, definitely everything that Masao said. Like that's like the number one thing of networking really is you're getting your name out there. You're showing people what you can do, and that can lead to opportunities.
Yeah, and there's networking and networking. There's like the people that you've met at events or like friends of friends, and they're like, oh, I think this is a good person, and that's important, and that will sometimes like be the difference between getting a job and not getting a job. But like I have worked with this person, I have seen what this person can deliver is like completely different. Like that kind of referral, like people take way more seriously than, yeah, I think that person's pretty chill.
Yeah, that
So
person seemed nice. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, also like anyone you work with, like I yesterday I just gave my boss for my first freelance job a gig. So like anyone you work with can potentially, if they will be like, and, like I can be like, I work with this person for a couple months and like I know they're a good person, I know they have quality. And people are much more willing to talk to you if like, you have some sort of connection and someone can vouch for you, be like, I work with this person, they are a good team, because it's hard. It's hard to like meet a random stranger and have to judge if they're a good team player. Um, it's really hard. So like any experience, like any connections through like even like a game jam or stuff can be really helpful for
like
sure.
one of the biggest concerns when you're hiring somebody is this person a sociopath? And when you can talk to somebody who has worked with them, like that is really that is something that definitely gets like alleviates your stress.
Yeah, because some people can just be really good in a room, but they're terrible to work with. You know what I mean? So it like having someone who knows what they're like and can vouch for them is super, super important.
Okay.
Beautiful. Yeah, so like
Do
I'm
we
I'm
squeeze in one
reading.
more question, or we
Yeah,
got 4 minutes?
yeah, yeah. So I think like everyone is very curious about like what are the best like ways to network, especially like in a post-COVID environment, but like we're still in COVID and like are like real world like real life events worth it? Like is it worth the trip? Should we like focus on more online events? What do you all think?
I would say I would say a big thing for me was reaching out to people through LinkedIn. Um, and we don't have much time, so I won't talk exactly about it, but yeah, just like finding people who are doing positions that are similar to what I did or what I'd want to do, saying, "Hey, I'm starting out. I'm so curious about what you do," and making that really about getting to know someone. Like when I go through their LinkedIn, I look at their hobbies, their interests, and I mention things that we have in common. Um, Virtual networking is totally manageable. It's totally fine. A video call is great. I've also done phone calls or even just texting in LinkedIn.
Honestly, it's way more cost effective to do it online than to try to go to places.
Yeah,
Like
definitely.
traveling is expensive, you know. And the thing is, a lot of people are still not doing it. Like a lot of
Yeah.
people are just not going to physical events because it's not sensible, you know. So, you know, the considering the pool of people you have access to online, I think is still kind of the better approach for the near future. Increasingly, there are more and more kind of online and virtual, activities, like things like game jams. Like there's more and more kind of online game jams because really there's no reason why you have to be all in the same place. Yeah, I do think that online's kind of the way to go.
Yeah, I would
Agree
say
with that.
like a lot of my good connection come from like online conference networking and depends on like different conferences different. Some conferences are very good online networking, some are not as good. But like I do say like the thing I always recommend online is you the conference doesn't always come back. You there's chance you will go to many conferences, it didn't come back with a job. And like when you spend a lot of money to go to like events at GDC and like people usually have this pressure, it's like, oh, I need to, and like a lot of game school telling students these be like, you need to go to get GDC and you need to like, because that's like how you get a job. And then like I will go to parties and you'll have students just be like, can you give me a job? And like it was like a weird, like a lot of like those weird like situation, but also like when you go to like in-person conference, there's a lot of noise. Like a good thing I love about online conference is I have way more one-on-one conversation than like in-person conference because when everyone fly from all over the world to this one place, there's a lot of pressure to be like, oh, I need to talk to as many people as possible. And a lot of people come here with agenda and like you're competing attention with like thousands other people who attended the conference versus a lot of like online conference they have like either small roundtable or have one-on-one like opportunity to like chat with people actually like have like a dedicated like conversation and it's more likely to maintain like connections uh later on too.
Yeah, I would say, just really quick, I've been in the industry 4.5 years, and 95% of my connections have come through online. But it is very valuable if there are local like meetup groups or something that you can join with other game developers. Otherwise, there's a lot of Discord communities that you can also join to meet people like similar to this one. So I would say definitely don't discount online stuff, but do whatever you feel comfortable with. Like I only went to my first GDC this past year, and I met people, but it was mostly people that I had already known online. So yeah,
That this year was my first GDC, and I've been in the industry for 16 years. So
yeah. No, there you go.
Yeah, it's mine too. Also, I just want to say to all the people in the chat worried about bothering people for networking, as long as you're polite and respectful, like it's often not a bother for people, especially if it's online. If they don't want to talk to you, they can just ignore the message. And I think that a lot of people they want to share their experiences. Like we're here because we want to share our experiences with you all. And so as long as you're polite about it, I think there's no harm done.
Yeah, yeah, I would say be polite, introduce yourself. If you have a specific question, go ahead and ask that question. Like, I'm much more likely to respond to a message that is like, "Oh, hey, I saw your portfolio. I had a question about XYZ," or, "I'm applying for this job. Do you have any advice?" I'm much more likely to look at something like that than just like, "Oh, hey."
yeah,
Yeah,
don't send a
definitely.
message that's like hello. Like I hate that. I'm like,
Yeah,
who
it's
are
just
you?
like, okay.
Like what do you want?
Like, do I need a
Bluff,
bluff?
Get to the point. Like
Yeah, because
WYD.
I mean,
yeah,
don't
it
be
can
rude. I mean,
Definitely.
say like be like polite, but like
mhm.
yeah, like I saw this and that. I have a question. Like get to there. Don't end with hello, because
Yeah,
Yeah.
because the
then
thing
you're
is,
like, and then because they have to like reply to you to see what it's even about, which they won't. Like I
Exactly.
don't reply to people
Yeah.
that say like hello.
No, me either. Yeah, and the thing is, like with LinkedIn, especially too, like people are getting messages all the time. So if you're clear, you introduce yourself, you're polite, you're a lot more likely to get a response back. Um, but for the most part, like people in this industry are very helpful. So definitely don't be afraid to reach out.
Yeah, like as Kelsey says, like just asking them about work, like work related, and like letting them know that you checked out their work, especially like most, like I think 99% of the time, designers and like a game dev will love to talk about their work. And like, please don't hesitate to ask them about that.
Here's a question that I still have is that once you've made that connection, say it's online, say it's not like your steadfast friends or anything, how do you continue to reach out to that person and keep that connection?
I have no idea. I would like to know myself.
Connections are
Yeah,
hard, man.
because like well, the weird thing is, so I have a podcast and I sit down and interview people for like 45 minutes to an hour and like frequently talk about very personal things. So I feel like I really get to know them, and then I will never talk to them ever again. And like I don't know what to do. Like if we have something in
Right,
common, like maybe, but like majority of the guests I'd never talk to again. Not because I don't want to be their friend or anything. It's just like, how do you reach out? I don't even know.
right. There's
I
only so
learned,
much time you have a day, too.
That's
yeah,
true.
I learned this. Oh my God, this sounds really sad, but a lot of adults are very lonely. So if you can just
It's
be
so
nice
true.
and
It's true.
towards you, like people just want to be cared. Like sometimes people just want to be cared, and like something like people I know what they're interested in. Sometimes I would just share a little bit, and also just like don't be like feel defeated if people don't reply because sometimes they get busy and like when you're crunch, when I'm during crunch, I don't want to talk to anyone. But like generally just be a nice person and try to connect with people on like a human level. Uh like yeah, like I hate to say this, but like I host a game dev networking event, and like it's good to like just hang out and stuff, and sometimes it's like people are just they just want to talk about themselves, they just want to like how are you, they just want to be cared. So like yeah, I think yeah, like adults are usually pretty lonely, so don't be afraid to reach out.
I think there was an article about like how men in their mid 30s, like some like disturbing percentage of men in their mid 30s had
They don't have friends.
answered that they had zero friends.
Oh,
Oh no.
God.
Oh no.
Yeah, I think that's definitely really good advice. I've also heard that myself. Like, even if it's something like, "Oh, hey, I saw you like Severance." Like, I literally just started the season, and you can just kind of go from there. Any little icebreaker is good.
Yeah,
So
that
I
was
think
like a
that's
fun.
our. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was a fun. No, no, I was gonna say that was a fun question to end this panel on. Actually, just like talk to people, man. Just like check in on them. Check in with your friends.
No, nobody's all right. So just be nice to them.
Et voilà. Uh,
All right,
thank
sorry
you
for
so
breaking.
much.
Thank you for
Thank you
having
so
me.
much.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
was fun. So thank you all for being with us today. Oh dear. Okay, Masao, like I have someone ringing the
Okay.
door. Can you? I'll just be
Well,
back in 1 second.
okay. Well, thank you to our guests. I think this was a great kickoff to our roundtable series. I really appreciate your time and your input. And everyone who is listening, thank you very much. This had like a huge attendance, and yeah, we're here to talk to you. So it's really great that so many of you tuned in. So thank you very much. And is
Yes,
Catherine back?
thank
Do
you.
I still talk?
Yes, I am back.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah, thank
thank you,
you.
everyone. So I will end the event now. Have a great day. Have a
Bye
great week.
bye.
Bye
Oh,
bye.
where should we share our socials if people want to reach out?
Oh, yeah.
In event chat, yes, feel free. So everyone here, feel free to share whatever links you want to share in event chat, so that we can all follow you.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Hope this is
Bye
helpful for everybody.
bye.
All
Yeah.
right, take care.
Bye.